Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Daniel Teaches Experience. Folks, today we've got an interesting topic lined up, but before we get into that, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sticking by me on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. I appreciate everything. I appreciate the views, and I'm glad that these talks are bringing you some value. If you haven't checked out the last two episodes, they were awesome. I had my buddy on, Mark, and my friend Kelly. We talked about some very interesting topics, some things I agreed with, some things I disagreed with. I thought they were quite educational. Now, today, folks, I'm going to be talking about perception. And perception in relation to how you present yourself to an audience and the kind of image that you give off to others. You see this in a number of ways, in a number of areas. You see this in relationships, at work. Think about first impressions, right? And if you say, well, Daniel, I don't care what people think about me, I would challenge that. I bet you there's at least one person in your life who, no, you care about how they think about you. That might be your spouse, that might be your supervisor, that might be your best friend. You want your best friend to think you're trustworthy and reliable. You want your spouse to think that you're a kind and giving person. You want your supervisor to think that you are a conscientious person, that you are punctual, that you are mature. So these things are important to take note of. I'm not sure how often you folks look at other podcasts or really podcasts that are where the large demographic is men. And to name a couple of them, obviously the biggest one would be Joe Rogan's podcast. You got Jordan Peterson's podcast, but there's also one or two smaller ones that you could say that are by one group known as Abba and Preach, and by another group known as Fresh and Fit. Now, recently there's been a little argument between the two different podcasting groups, and I think this is a perfect example to demonstrate the importance of accountability, reputation, and perception. So, in one hand, you have this podcast group known as Fresh and Fit. And what they do is they invite a bunch of people over. First of all, when I saw this podcast for the first time, my mind spun a little bit because it's two guys and they could invite over like 8 or 9 girls and they give them all microphones. Immediately when I saw that, my anxiety shot up because I know how easy it is to talk over people. I know how easy it is to not be able to hear someone out. I know how easy it is to have a limited time. I don't care that you have 1 hour to talk. If you have 9 people with 9 microphones, oh my God, dude, it's really, really hard to speak in a clear and concise manner and make sure that everyone gets the fair amount of time to explain their perspective and their point of view. Regardless, these gentlemen bring on different ladies and they talk about certain things that they don't like about modern dating now. They're more old school, they like it traditionally. I believe they have heritage from either the Middle East or maybe parts closer there. Long story short, these individuals, they start becoming synonymous with certain ideas, right? So they start saying things like, people need to be accountable. Girls live in an emotional reality. We live in a fact-based reality. They'd say, it's important to own up to everything that you say. Long story short, now I'm taking this example from a podcast. You can apply this to anyone in your life, a supervisor, a friend, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, who says certain things that they mean, that they're really serious on. So then what happens is you begin to associate these ideas with that person. When I think of Fresh and Fit, I think of accountability. I think of very stoic, non-emotional. I think of very logical, rational, looking at studies as opposed to just making stuff up and making fun of someone, right? Now, all of a sudden, imagine that partner or that person goes against the very things that they spoke about earlier. Imagine you have a boyfriend and they speak about the importance of being faithful and trustworthy and he wants to see your phone all the time and he hates it when there are other guys even looking at you, even if you aren't doing anything, and then you find out he cheated on you. That's weird, huh? Imagine if your best friend is very scared of people coming into his house and robbing him. Right? He's paranoid and he's very strict, so he doesn't put anything out there in the living room for anyone to rob. Even though you're his friend, he still doesn't do it. He says, hey man, please respect my boundaries. You say, sure. And then you find out he robbed you. He stole some money from your wallet. That's nuts. Like the paradoxical idea is, it is the last person who you'd think to do that did that. When the preacher goes out of his way and says any homosexual activity, you're going to hell. But then you find out that same preacher engages in that activity. It's tough. It's very tough. Now, for the Fresh and Fit podcast, all you got to know is this. Basically, over time, they started doing the complete opposite of which they advocated for. These guys started their podcast to help men, to help them in the dating world, to help them build confidence, style, work on themselves, level up, become the best version of themselves that they can. And yet, when they were met with criticism from other YouTubers, what was the first thing they did? They called them names, which are known as ad hominem attacks. That's like me and you are talking, and we're talking about economics. And instead of disagreeing with my points, you go, well, Daniel, you're just an idiot. Okay, how is that relevant to the conversation? So what people do is when they don't have a coherent argument and they don't have rational and logical points to support their argument, to support the discussion, they'll just throw a label at you or they'll attack you. Well, you're under 6 feet tall. Okay, what does that have to do with you didn't address my points at all? So whenever you're in a situation and someone uses an ad hominem attack, an ad hominem is a philosophical fallacy. It's an argument fallacy, meaning it is an invalid argument. Whatever that they're doing, it is not valid, it is not logical, it is not rational. They're going besides the point. And whenever you hear that, your mind should immediately stir and go, wait a minute, you don't have any good points, because if you did, you wouldn't attack me. You'd give me your good points. So these guys who are really big on losing logic and using fact-based are out here using ad hominem attacks. There was another YouTuber who disagreed with them, and he said something mean about his wife, he said something mean about his country, started making fun of his haircut. It's like, dude, that has nothing to do. If I criticize your points, you're going to defend your points. What use does it make to criticize me? I've said this for how long now? For years. Never attack the person, you attack the ideas. It is so, I don't know what the terminology is. It's just so simple-minded. Like it is, I do not understand. I do not understand. I think that those people leap over the idea of wanting to persuade and just go, well, you're dumb for thinking the way that you think. It's like, that's not a valid argument, right? You have to present your points. You can call me whatever you like, but that doesn't mean it's true or relevant in the situation. So these guys who make this entire agenda about how they are and how they carry themselves, when their points get addressed in a logical manner, guess what happened? They got very emotional. They started attacking a person personally. They didn't take any accountability for the words that they said. And then they're surprised why people are upset at them. And they lost quite a few followers. If I'm not mistaken, I believe they went from like 450,000 to, I want to say 390. So it's a decent bit. But my point here isn't bashing someone when they're down. And recently they've made a podcast, an episode coming out, and they apologize. They take ownership. They say, hey, you know what? We shouldn't have said that stuff. If we ever get into an argument with someone, I don't have to criticize your wife. I don't have to make fun of your country or your hairline, right? I attack your ideas, not you. That is very poor form. It's frankly, it's not what an intelligent person does. An intelligent person makes valid arguments, and those arguments were invalid. And you were fully aware of that. And the crazy thing is that on their podcast, on more than one occasion, they kick girls off. You're too emotional. Get out of here. Or you don't think logical enough. Get out of here. You know what the problem is with women? They're not accountable enough. It's like, first of all, that's a hasty generalization. You've brought in 8 strippers, 8.8 OnlyFans girls, and you're using that small sample size to generalize it to every other woman that's living on the planet. So that's the first one. Second of all, man, if you say something like that, how can you possibly do something that goes completely against that? For a while, their videos had a different dislike to like ratio. There were more dislikes than likes. And my point isn't, hey, you've done something bad, you're a terrible person, down with you. My point is this. If you do something wrong, if you betray someone's trust, be it a partner, be it fans or subscribers that watch you online, your supervisor, your friend, whoever it is, breaking someone's trust is very easy. It is frighteningly easy. Gaining the trust back is very hard, and even at times, impossible. Folks, in order to be a trustworthy person, certain things have to be in play, right? Someone has to trust you. What does that mean? That means, roughly speaking, that they put themselves in a vulnerable position, and you, to some extent, have control over the next actions or over the event or over some sort of outcome that they do not have control over, but will be heavily impacted / influenced by. So a person puts themselves in a vulnerable position, however that may be. That may be from as little as, you're coming over to my place, we want to hang out. I'm going, hey man, I'd really crave like a tea or something. Can you get me one? And then you say, sure. And then you go on the way, you stop at McDonald's, towards you get me tea. That can be trust, right? I trust you to bring me a warm drink. You can be from that minor and seemingly insignificant to your boyfriend or girlfriend's going out with her friends. She's going to be at a party. There's going to be drinks there. There's going to be other people there who might be interested in your partner because they're a good-looking person. You put yourself in a vulnerable position by going, yeah, go out, have an amazing time with your friends. I trust you. I trust you to go out by yourself with your friends, and I know if a dude hits on you or a girl hits on you, I've got nothing to worry about. I will put myself in a vulnerable place because I believe that you are a trustworthy person, right? So what happens when someone betrays that trust? The biggest thing, and I've talked about this once, but I feel as if there aren't enough people talking about this. Whenever you hear about breakups or some guy getting fired from his job or friends going opposite directions, everyone talks about, I can't believe you did this, I felt betrayed. You're right, it was betrayal, it was shocking. But if you go a little bit deeper, you go, well, why was it betrayal? What does betrayal mean? And this is really, really important. You can't betray someone if you don't have a good relationship with them. It's really hard for a stranger to betray you because you don't expect anything of them. The moment we become friends, we start dating, we have some sort of a relationship, well, now I look at you differently, right? I put you in a different light. So if you're to stab me in the back as opposed to a stranger, it's gonna hurt more coming from you. Because as we meet people throughout life, we make these perceptions of them. As you meet me, in your mind, you're going to start, okay, he's a kind guy, he's open-minded, he can be a little absent-minded at times, he's very disciplined, he is kind of a workaholic, right? So you start making this perception of me. And if you have this idea, well, he's a trustworthy guy, he's very kind, he would never do something like that, all of a sudden, if I go and do something that goes completely against this perception that you have created of me, that perception shatters. And I can come and I can apologize for cheating on you, for not showing up to work, for going behind my friend's back. I can apologize and be sincere about it. But that's not the issue here. Well, part of the issue is being accountable, obviously. But the bigger issue is this. The perception that you have created for me has now shattered. Somewhere, something in your judgment, you were wrong. And that, as a human being from a biological perspective, is scary. In order to survive, we judge people. Do I feel comfortable around this person? Can I trust this person? If my back's against the wall, can I call on them to help me? If the answer is yes, good. That reassures me. If the answer is no, that creates a little bit of anxiety and I go, all right, I'm going to keep my distance. The problem is, if you build a relationship with someone and they do something to quote unquote betray your trust and it shatters that perception of them, now you don't know who they are anymore. That's not a hyperbole. That's not an exaggeration. That's a genuine statement saying, I thought you were someone who would never do X. You have done X. So what does that mean? That means, how did I not see this coming? That means, was my judgment flawed? Did I not see the red flags in the beginning? And that's even a bad look on you. A lot of times, I talk a lot about taking accountability. If I'm ever with a friend or a girlfriend and something happens and they betray or go behind my back, my first thought was, man, I was so wrong. I take the blame. My judgment was flawed. I saw you for something other than what you actually appeared to be. And then my questions from there are, how did this happen? The next logical human being train of thought is, how many other people am I wrong about? You don't understand how absolutely insane this thought is. But it's rational. I don't want you to think insane like, oh, he's a weirdo. No. It is such a mind-crippling thought because all of a sudden you go, if I was wrong about you, am I naive? How many other people are waiting to betray me? And if I am wrong, how do I know if I can trust anybody? Now that sounds very extreme, but folks, you take a 12, 13-year-old, a young man or a young woman who at a young age is very impressionable, and they have certain trust issues, let's say with their parents, with their dad walking out on them or their mother abusing them, and then you're surprised why that person has relationship issues and finds it hard to commit or trust people when they're in their mid-20s? You don't think that impacts a person? You don't think if you're dating a girl and she's been cheated on by her last 2 boyfriends, you don't think that she views the relationship differently? Now you have idea, well, was I naive? Did the other person maliciously intend to take advantage of me? How did I allow that to happen? And again, from a biological perspective, the past doesn't matter in and of itself. I feel confident saying that statement. The past only matters in this context in relation to stopping something from happening again in the future. The reason why it's important to remember heartbreak and to remember betrayal is so that I can prevent it from happening again in the future. Because if my judgment is flawed, and if I dated you or I hired you as an employee or you were my best friend and something happened that I did not anticipate, what can I learn from the past so I do not experience that again in the future? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice. Who's the problem here? It's not you. It's me. So in relation to that podcast, you come to this weird place where I used to check out their videos all the time. I agreed with some of their points. I disagreed with others. But I thought for the most part they were interesting. But now I'm in this weird position with them where if they're talking about different topics, hey, if you're young, it's really important to get a good credit score. Awesome. Hey man, if you're young, it's really important to just focus on yourself and be the best person that you can. Great. But the moment those guys start talking about something that I know they contradicted themselves at, you can't tell a girl, you can't say that all women are emotional when literally on the podcast we saw you get super emotional and flip out. You can't tell people that they have to take accountability for your actions if everybody literally just saw you on your podcast not take accountability. You hit up a girl saying that you wanted to collab with them. The girl said, great. You said, by the way, I'm not collaborating with you unless we sleep together. The girl goes, oh, no, I'm not. I'm willing to collaborate for a YouTuber, but I don't want to sleep with you. Now, fresh and fit, what did you say? You came out and said, well, I wanted to be honest. On this podcast, we talk about being honest, and I didn't want to lie to her, and I wanted to sleep with her. You should shoot your shot. It's like, dude, fair enough. But the problem is you can't say stuff like that when a couple weeks ago you made a podcast saying, oh, it's terrible to pay for sex. You should never pay for prostitutes. Sex should never be transactional. And yet, you collaborating, you're using the clout, you're using that marketing, you're using your brand, getting her on your platform in exchange for sex. How can you tell me that sex should never be transactional, you should never pay a prostitute, and yet take out cash? You're doing the exact same thing with that young lady. You're saying, yeah, we can totally collaborate as long as you sleep with me first. Is that not transactional? Is there something wrong with that? Subjectively, I'm not a fan of that. I think that's kind of a scumbag move. Objectively, no, there's nothing wrong with that. It's your podcast. You can do whatever you like. If you can have people dance to get on it, you can have people pay you to get on it, you can have people sleep with you to get on it. If they're fine with doing that, objectively, whatever. Well, my opinion doesn't matter. But it is the inconsistency in logic that I have a problem with. If you want to pay for prostitutes, go for it. No one's stopping you. But how can you come and shame people who do that when you do it secretly? So now, when I see those video titles of you, fresh and fit, and you go, girl gets too emotional, had to get kicked out, or girl doesn't take any accountability, I'm like, wow, who does that sound like? Who does that sound like? How can you, if your husband just cheated on you, how can he give a lesson on how to be in a faithful relationship? You don't want that guy as a professor for Faithful Relationships 101. You don't want that guy having a YouTube channel. The only thing that gentleman can do is tell you what not to do. Is say, hey, this is what I did. Don't do anything that I did. This is my ideology. Don't incorporate any of this. That's the only thing he can tell you to do. That's the problem. It's not about apologizing. It's not about saying I'm sorry. It is a little bit about accountability, but my context is this. You have to understand that your reputation is now severed with the people. Right? I hold you to a certain standard. A standard that you son of a gun, you set for yourself. You said, I will not do X, I will not do X, I will not do X. You did every single thing that you said you wouldn't do and that you shame other people for doing. And now I'm supposed to take you seriously? Imagine I have this episode and this podcast is about being open-minded. And then you watch a video of me, you watch an encounter of me with someone else who disagrees with me, and I immediately shut them down. And I go, you're dumb for disagreeing with me. Your mom's a goat. And blah, blah, blah. You go, Dana, what happened, man? You said you were open-minded and listening, and it's important to listen. But the moment you had someone who disagreed with you, you just went against everything that you stood for. And I can make an apology video and say I was wrong and really mean it. But the problem is you won't see me as the same because that image of me is crippled. So now it's distorted, and now you kind of have to judge and go, do I just abandon this dude altogether because I can't count on him? I don't know how many times I'm going to have to change the perspective in which I look at him. Or maybe over time you go, you know what? Everyone's human, everybody makes mistakes. Largely, 80%, he's still the same guy that I thought he was. 20%, it happens. So that's for individual people to decide how far they kind of want to push that line. Losing trust is unbelievably easy. Gaining it back is extremely hard and sometimes impossible. For any podcasts out there, listen, anyone who ever does anything, I shouldn't say that, most people who ever do anything, you have good intent. If you're a fellow podcaster, if you're a fellow YouTuber, you want people to do better. You're trying to either A, educate them or entertain them, or maybe both, and that's amazing. But it's really, really important to sit down with yourself and become extremely self-aware. Who am I? What is my message to the people? And what is my desired outcome? My name is Daniel. I'm a psychology student. My intended message is to get as much education out there about psychology in relation to current events, gender, relationships, philosophy, motivation, meaning. And my desired outcome is to have people be more educated and thus more healthy and applying those things to their lives. When you do that, you kind of have a path. So you're not going to see me do something that completely goes against it, right? If I make an episode that says I'm not a fan of alcohol, it would be very weird to see a picture or video of me just completely blackout drunk. When I'm saying this, everyone goes, yeah, of course, Daniel, that's obvious, of course. But I feel like people underestimate the impact that it has on your reputation and the way other people see you and the way that you can gain back your trust. So I talked a lot about losing trust. Let's talk about a few ways to gain it back. So when you've lost trust, the first thing that you want to do to attempt to gain it back, and there is no guarantee, mind you, again, it depends on many things, right? It depends on your personality trait. It depends on the other person's personality trait. How forgiving are they? How accepting are they? Excuse me. It also depends on where's the circumstance. Are we talking about you told your buddy to buy you a warm drink and they didn't? Are we talking about your husband or wife of 10 years was unfaithful? Are we saying maybe a buddy of yours at work went behind your back, lied to your supervisor, so he got a promotion and you didn't, right? So there's levels and you got to judge that and use your own discretion. But for the most part, a few tips to keep in mind for gaining back someone's trust is this. First of all, you take accountability. The way that you gain someone's trust is not by pretending that you didn't lose it in the first place. No, you do the opposite. You look at them in the eyes and you go, listen, let's address the elephant in the room. I betrayed your trust. You think this of me, and you have every right to. I would think the exact same things of me as well. That's not me making excuses. That's not me saying it's okay to do what I did. But I want you to know that I understand the position that I am in because of the actions that I committed. I accept the consequences of my actions. 100%. I am not lying to you. I will not formulate it another way. I did what I did. I sincerely apologize. I wish that I didn't and it happened. But I promise you it'll never happen again. So what you're doing there is you're taking accountability for your actions. You are stating the feelings that the other person's feeling. Because it's important. A lot of times I say, oh guys, it's important to focus on logic and facts. But not all the time. It's really important to focus on feelings as well. How did that make you feel? That's extremely important. Because sometimes someone's feeling something, but they can't describe it. So when you say, hey, listen, you must have felt betrayed, angry, upset, you must have felt alone. When you say those things out loud, it's like, even on a bare minimum, even if they don't want to agree with you, a part of their subconscious is going, yeah, I did feel like that. So that gets you kind of on the same wavelength. So you take accountability. You own everything that you've said and everything that you've done. You apologize, and you apologize sincerely. You promise them that you will never do it again. Now, this is not a guarantee that you're going to get their trust back, but you're moving in the right direction. What you're also going to do is you're going to put yourself in vulnerable positions. So we talked about trust, and we talked about how basically being a trustworthy person is if someone else is in a vulnerable position, they have faith in you or trust in you that if the power is in your hands, or if you have the control to change a situation, you will do so in their favor and not against them. That you will do something that will enhance their well-being or whatever that may mean, and not to harm them. So what you're going to do is you're going to put yourself in positions where now you're vulnerable and you're going to give them the ability to control the outcome. You're going to say, listen, I know that I betrayed you when roles were reversed, so now let's do it the opposite way. Hey, can you do X for me? Or hey, I'm going to tell you this secret that's between me and you that could really harm me if anyone else found out. And you're going to give them the gun and you're going to turn the safety off. Now, to some of you, this might sound crazy because you go, well, Daniel, if that person wants revenge, they're going to use that and they're going to use it against me. They're going to betray my trust to get even one-on-one. That's completely up to you, using your own discretion with respect to what you want to reveal to them, how you want to put yourself in a vulnerable position, and trusting the other person. Because they might very well use that against you. It is 100% possible. But there's also the possibility that they recognize the power that they have. Now you're in a vulnerable position. And if they decide to not betray you, not to use it against you, they will realize to themselves and go, okay, I'm not going to do what they did to me because I'm a bigger person. And I am a trustworthy person, so they'll honor their side of the bet, which is great. It's good for them, and it's also good for the relationship between you two. No matter romantic, platonic, it doesn't matter. Eventually, you're going to get to a point where you can start slowly doing things for them that require a little bit of trust. So if this is your partner who you cheated on because you went out with your buddies, and maybe let's say things are a little bit calmer, you start seeing each other again, I wouldn't recommend, hey, I'm going out with the boys. I'll see you, I'll be home late, don't stay up. But do little things, right? Do little things. Again, break it down to, hey, I'm gonna go out, grab a drink. And she goes, yeah, I'm really thirsty. Hey, let me go grab one for you, right? So you try to build up trusting it, but not at the level at which it was. If that was level 10, you go to level 1. And you say, okay, I know you don't trust me at level 10. And that's okay. Level 10 means super severe trust. You're going out with the boys, you're gonna be late, you're gonna be drinking, she trusts you that you won't cheat on her, right? And level 1 is the complete opposite. It's very insignificant, the outcome isn't very important, and you go, okay, I know you won't trust me up here, but will you trust me down here at 1? You will? Excellent. You're gonna go and you're gonna show them, and you will absolutely never betray them again. You go, okay, look, you trusted me at level 1, look what happened. Maybe next week, hey, can you trust me at a little bit higher, at 1.5? Maybe 2, 2.5, 3, 3. In theory, you could work your way back up on this sort of trusting scale or trusting meter. In theory, that's not always the case. Sometimes a person says, no, I will never trust you ever again. I won't even trust you to go buy groceries for me. Or maybe they get up to 5 and they'll say, okay, I will never trust you more than this. And at that point, folks, you can't force it. You can't control it. In my opinion, you just have to respect their decision and go, okay, you're not going to open up that part of you to me anymore, and that's okay. The point is, you focus on what you can control. You understand your perception, their perception of you has now changed substantially, and you have to do what you can do to attempt to alter that or to make it right or to be what you once were, but you'll never be what you once were. You'll never be, it's impossible, in my opinion. You can be something similar to that, though, or you can be a modified version of that. And if both partners are willing to do it, I believe you can restore your image at least somewhat close to what you used to be, or at least to a point where maybe you can go back to what you were. So I have heard stories of people cheating, but still getting back together, seeing a counselor and working through it. I challenge you to think about yourself. I want you to think about instances that you've had with friends, with relationship partners, at work, with employers, and think about certain things that maybe someone did that completely caught you off guard. Maybe a coworker who you're really friendly with started talking behind your back. Maybe your girlfriend or boyfriend who is super sweet and gentle and warm, you started flirting with someone at a party. I want you to think about how that made you feel and how, if at all, you talked to that person about it, how you got over it, and how your kind of mental perception of them changed, and because of that, did your behaviors towards them change? If you saw your boyfriend flirting with a girl at a party because you were distant, were you right by his side every time you went to another party to monitor him even closer? These are important things to consider. So folks, long story short, public perception is super important. The psychology of your image is extremely important. It's very important to know how people see you, how people analyze you. And if you break someone's trust, it's very hard to get back. In that example I give today about Fresh and Fit, I'm very happy that they're taking accountability. They're coming out, they're saying, hey man, we were wrong. This is what we did. We shouldn't have said this stuff. Now the ball is in the court of the followers, the fans, the supporters who go, can I change that perception of you and look at you differently and just accept you for what you are? Or no, it's like, dude, I can't take you seriously anymore. I can't see you as anything else than the person who lied and cheated. And it might not even a bad thing. It completely goes back to you. It goes back to your boundaries. It goes back to what you're okay with and what you're not okay with. So think about that. Think about that a lot. Think about your perception. Think about your trust with others. Think about reputation. And if you're thinking about, forgiveness and giving back, it's not just as much as a sincere apology and buying you flowers. It's more than that. It's the psychology behind it. That's what I hope that this episode did for you today. Folks, thank you very much for listening. I appreciate every single one of you listening on Apple iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube. I can't tell you how happy I am to do these things. I can't tell you how much I've learned, how much I've improved, how much I've enjoyed your feedback. Sometimes you send me questions and you go, Daniel, I disagreed with this. And I get so extremely happy when I hear your disagreements, when I hear your agreements, when I hear your suggestions for videos. Hey man, you should do a video about relationships. You should do a video about parenting. So I read that stuff. I take it all in. I write it down, so don't think that it goes unheard. But regardless, I thank you very much for sticking with me. Please take care of yourselves. Stay safe. Take care of your loved ones. And I'm sure you will hear from me again next week. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.